So, first things first, Finn, how are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Yes, very good.
Okay. So before we talk about Total Depravity, I'd like to go back to your previous record. Having made Total Depravity, how do you look back at that record?
I think you always tend to, I always tend to be making records as a direct result of failure in the one before. I think you view the last one generally with the most disdain. I've sort of grown fonder and fonder of the earlier records as time's gone on, and I've sort of moved further away from them. Yeah, so I mean, though that's gotten less intense over time as well. It's sort of, I feel okay about the last one, but I want to do something very different with this one, and I guess, yeah, correct some wrongs of the past. It always feels a little like that.
I won't make you pinpoint where you think you went wrong, but in a general sense, what did you do differently than this time around?
I think the most profound difference was giving ourselves as much time as possible. Ironically, time stays as we go. Yeah, we didn't have any money to make the last one. We put it out ourselves. It was a lot more of a yeah. So this time we had the luxury of a little more time and a label and things. It was sort of funding it. So we were, okay, well, we can take this time just to completely sort of experiment and see where we end up at the end of it, really, rather than just sort of bashing out a bunch of songs and moving on to the next one. And also we had our own little studio for this one, which was cool, and so that kind of allowed for more experimentation in there as well, and sort of writing around other instruments. So I could go in and play drums and sort of start with a groove and then sort of write around that, which is sort of new as well. In the past I've always just had a piano or guitar, and so sometimes songs were being kind of produced as they were and recorded as they were being written, and yeah, so there are quite a few different approaches on
so
this.
Before we go further on that, you mentioned this disdain you get for certain songs or the music. Does that happen immediately after because obviously you have to perform them, or you do perform them. So when does this come in?
I think you're constantly, I mean, I don't know about everyone else, it's a constant little battle going on with the sides of yourself that you think are remotely sort of interesting, and the sides that you're just, you know, so embarrassed by, and sort of that you're trying to push away from. And yeah, so you know, even with this record, you know, there's 12 songs on it, but there are maybe 50, 60 that were written, and within all of those you go through different sort of experiences with, and for, you know, a week you think you've written you know, just the greatest thing that you ever, and then you realize it's just absolute shit, and you have to sort of reassess all the other songs around it, and so, you know, it's a constant battle to work out what is good about what you're doing and where you want to take it, I guess, where is interesting to take it.
So when do you kind of find this idea of where it's going, or this idea how to fit the songs together, and what is actually a good song? Does that happen just organically? Or?
Yeah, I think it's all that I learn so much more each time, and I think albums have this strange direction of their own. I really felt that with this one particularly, where there's a lot of sort of drama and sort of within it, but ultimately it's going to end up where it's going to end up. And there's this very curious moment towards the end when, or at the end, I suppose, when you sort of go, oh, okay, that's finished, that's done. And it's an odd thing, I think, because I don't really know why you stop, but there is this sort of, I just felt overwhelmingly at the end that actually it didn't really matter how I'd these sort of internal battles within it. It's actually sort of going in a direction, and you sort of have to just kind of escort it along, you know, and be sort of protective along the way, but escort it along. But ultimately, it's going to end up where it's going to end up, and
so the battle in that sense is very much part of what it ends up.
I guess, yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm still getting my head around it a lot of the time. Sort of like, that's so weird. Why did I, think that, and then that changed, and then it's a. I think that's what makes it so exciting. Still, is that each time it a little bit more becomes clearer, and you see a little bit more of the shape of something, and then another bit that you thought you'd worked out becomes more obscure, and. Yeah, it's great. It's just maddening and terrifically exciting.
Can you give me one example of this, of maybe something that you've discovered in recent weeks about a song, or about maybe even yourself, when you listen to the new song?
As in, like, things to do with the process of it. That
kind of finding out. Oh, I was thinking this at that time, or I was in this place, or.
Yeah, I mean, within writing them, that's sort of the biggest. That's the part I find the most interesting. I can only compare it to that sort of feeling of like there's something great about being lost, I think, and if you start thinking that you've got a sort of a map for where you're going, like, oh, okay, now I know how to write it. I know how to write a song. I sit down and I do this, and I think about that, and then it comes out and it's great. As soon as you start thinking like that, you just these awful turds just start to sort of rise to the surface, and so you can't. That doesn't work. See, I think you have to constantly. It's like being lost in this sort of amazing city or labyrinth or something. You're constantly just looking for different signs. So yeah, I mean, there's been times where I've tried to sit down and be like, okay, let's write. I'd really like to write a song about whatever, or a song that has a sort of certain. In my worst moments, you sit down and you're like, oh, I should write something, really catchy. Let's have a hit. That would be great. Wouldn't that be cool to have a hit? And you sit down and you say, okay, I mean, I can know my way around sort of that sort of thing, catchy sort of things. It just doesn't work at all. And you try and then anything we have come close to, even remotely close to something like that, I can't remember how I got there at all. I didn't, I usually can't remember any of the good decisions I've made. I can't remember making them or what I was thinking at the time.
But in that sense, because you mentioned that feeling of being lost, and is writing then for you, do you seclude yourself while writing?
Yes, generally, completely.
Okay.
And there's a few instances on the record because of working with LP and where we were actually recording them as they were being written. So there's a few exceptions to that, which was really fun actually, and a lot quicker. And like Axolotl it's all recorded. The vocals were just recorded through a laptop microphone because we didn't have any time to get a microphone. So the lyrics were written very quickly, and it was all sort of had this momentum to it, which was really nice. But generally, I stew with these songs for months, years sometimes, working on going back to them and editing them, and then towards the end they're brought to the band, and then that sort of changes them again.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is the oldest song then that ended up on the album?
It's probably Iodine and Iron.
Okay.
Was that was sort of resuscitated from a while back. Yeah.
Do you remember when and why you wrote it?
No.
Fair enough.
I mean, that one's that was probably finished a long time ago as well. It didn't go through many edits in terms of the songwriting, but the band and the production, everything sort of changed, evolved over time.
And you mentioned earlier that you also you started working more from sounds and not necessarily just you and the piano. Can you give me an example of a sound or something that stuck with you and then a song arose out of it?
What would be a good example of that? There's one called Do Your Bones Glow at Night, which was, entirely an instrumental for a while. It was like just a 1 minute sort of bunch of strange loops of sort of drums and put through different compressors and things. I was just sort of dicking around with that really, and that's one that was started entirely as just me fucking around with it in the studio, and then it was brought to Adam, and then the band were brought in, and so it all sort of began around just purely a little recorded sort of loop, I suppose.
In that sense, then, because obviously afterwards lyrics are added. Does the music that you write drive the lyrics, or can it be vice versa?
Yeah, it can be absolutely either way.
Okay.
And actually, that one I think I had a title. I almost always have a title or something early on that sort of inspires the tone of it or something. Or there's a little line, or I was probably singing along to it while I was making the loops as well. It's quite rare that I just write a piece of music and then stick lyrics over the top or a melody over the top. They do tend to come in tandem for me.
So if we take Do Your Bones Glow at Night, what was it that you were trying to convey in that song?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I'm ever doing. I think I'm just sort of trying to, there's obviously something you want to say in there, something that's trying to get out, that you're trying to articulate. But it's really only when you've finished with it that you feel like you've done that, I think. I don't often feel like, obviously, because when you're beginning something, you're just sort of following the scent. Right. And fuck knows. I think that's why it corrupts the enterprise if at the beginning you're sort of like, oh, well, that's where I'm going. I don't know, I've spoken to other songwriters who are the complete opposite, who are just like, no, I sit down and say I'm going to write it, and then they write that. And so, it's possibly just my brain that has trouble with this stuff. I don't know. It's but then, as I say, as soon as you start even thinking like that oh, it's always chaos. You can never have an idea of what you're doing. Then I will do that, and I'll write something, and so that doesn't fucking work as an idea either. It's constantly, the walls are constantly changing. Sure.
But I believe you grew up listening to a lot of songwriters. Your mother had a big record collection. In that sense, do you kind of know what makes a good song now? For you at least?
I mean, I know what I like, yeah, for sure. There's certainly, I'd say that a lot of the music I like has similar traits to it, I suppose. I generally like things with good words and melody, and but yeah, it's I mean, I suppose that's evolving all the time as well, or at least changing. Sure. It's certainly directness, is something I'm always sort of aware of, that that you can't. There is a danger always of just disappearing up your own ass if you lose the idea. You are communicating something, I suppose. But I don't know. Yeah.